One is measurement, the devil in the details. I mean, Cycle spoke about some trends, but where's the data coming from? To tell us more, I'd like to call upon Shravan, Palayam, Srinivas from Datawrkz.
Good morning. So, Viagra was introduced in the world in 1996. This medicine, which was initially sold as a drug, meant to help hypertensive patients, is today sold as a drug to enhance pleasure. How this medicine, sildenafil, today known as Viagra, was marketed made all the difference at Pfizer. The journey from using it to help hypertensive patients, but then understanding what its key differentiator was, could only be achieved in analyzing and measuring how its users would benefit from it. Hi, I'm Shravan from Datawrkz, and I'm here to talk about how measurements can help turn your BP medication into a billion-dollar sex industry. Just kidding. I'm here to fill you in on why measurements is key to helping your game succeed and how you can grow. The devil, of course, lies in the details. So, what do we do at Datawrkz? Right? We help scale businesses, we help monetize them, we help dashboard them, we help cohort your users, and we also build business insights. And how did I land up here? I've been closely associated with the web and mobile monetization space since 2011. My interests lie in providing scalable solutions to businesses and helping them monetize and deploy them. I've helped scale an ad network business from a zero ARR to $1 million ARR at 27, post which I left to work with the likes of InMobi and in Malaysia, where I headed their brand business, and also for Amazon, where I helped sellers scale their businesses by spending on the Amazon platform. So, what do we do with gaming developers and how do we work with them, right? We work with hyper-casual games, we work with RMG games, we work with kids games, we work with sports and mid-core games. So what does the market opportunity right now look like when it comes to the entire gaming ecosystem, especially when it comes to the money, right? That's where the money, the chunk lies. The ad revenue in the video game industry is slated to increase 5x from 2016 to 2029. Between 2020 to 29, there's been almost $100 billion increase in less than a decade. What this means for you is that brands have finally opened their eyes and begun spending money on in-game advertising, which is great. They're finally considering these audiences and this medium as something serious from which they can therefore gain eyeballs and traction with for their branding purposes. What it means for developers is you guys need to begin connecting the dots and begin seeing how you can attract ad revenue while making the game brand safe as well as viral. What about India? Right? There's a steady 8 to 12% growth, and this chunk doubles in under a decade, which is great. It's still under $1 billion, but this will progressively grow as the gaming ecosystem grows and there's more value that's being shown to the advertiser in terms of engagement. How does the ARPU look in India? We're looking at an ARPU growth which is back on track since the pandemic. A whole bunch of microtransactions can really help increase this pie if the implementation is done correctly. I know this is a buzzword and a lot of people talk about it, but in a lot of cases I see it being pretty badly implemented. So this is something that developers really need to focus on to see how your hyper-casual games especially, where I see there's a lot of scope for implementation of microtransactions. Why measure? As businesses, as gaming businesses, all of you want to grow. For that you need users, and what you need from users is their time and attention, which is where you're going to make money, right? And then you use the money. It's a virtuous cycle where you use the money to bring in more investments or invest it in a new product or version of your game. So this session is primarily geared towards the game developer understanding through a marketer's lens how they need to build their game and why they need to look at all of these aspects as they begin growing the game, and understand how to implement some of these steps as they go along, so that the game is tweakable and moldable to suit market trends and what the market needs. I've kind of given a cross the chasm sort of a chart over here, where a game is trying to reach 10 million users, and I've segregated that into, how do you reach 100K users, how do you reach 1 million users, 1 million to 7 million users, and thereon, right? And there are different tenets that you need to look at, which are user acquisition, retention, the virality of the game, the ad revenue, in-app purchases, and engagement. And as you progress, as the game's life cycle progresses from the start to the finish, right, you're going to have various aspects that you're going to want to look at when you're building your game and when you're trying to measure the game and define benchmarks. So some of it is when you're in your starting stages, you'll want to look at price discovery, which is very important. You'll want to test for your D7 and D30 retention when you're trying to hit 1 million users. You'll want to see how the reviews stack up, because only if you have positivity in your reviews and people share your game is it going to blow up in the market. You're going to want to do testing for in-app purchases, first to begin with a UAT test, and then to even see if subscriptions and the likes are viable, right? And then you kind of start testing for engagement, where you see the number of sessions in a week, in a month, and so on and so forth. As the cycle progresses, you're going to want to see how the games matures. You want to run these campaigns, that your user acquisition campaigns, or you want to start measuring user acquisition against your return on ad spend and return on any marketing effort for that matter, right? You're going to invest on growth, you're going to invest on ROAS, and eventually you're going to invest in re-engaging the users and reigniting some of the growth that was lost, or users that kind of left the game and need to be brought back. And in terms of virality, you're going to look at reels and broadcasts and community interactions as you grow. But as the game kind of starts hitting a saturation, then you begin focusing on nostalgia. And believe me, I work with some of the games that focus on nostalgia today. So they're already 10 years into the market. And then we start promoting reels that talk about the nostalgia of the game. And it kind of went and gave us a lot more new users, which were actually existing users, but they were re-engaging with the game. So this is something that you need to keep in mind as a marketer, or while wearing a marketer cap, right? You need to position your game very strongly for sponsorship, position it for private marketplaces and programmatic guarantees. These are means through which you can attract agencies and brands to buy ad inventory from your game. I know for some of you this might be something that's far-fetched, but for people who have over 10 million users in a focused geography, I think this is something that you definitely need to begin focusing on. Probably try understanding through your Google Analytics and Firebase data what sort of audiences you have, and then accordingly pitch to marketers. And believe me, it's not too hard to kind of go and get those marketing dollars, right? As the game kind of wears off, you'll also want to try and promote other games within your own ecosystem or within friends and family ecosystem, right? If you have somebody else who wants to promote their game within your game, I think it should be open. That's the way it kind of, or the same concept of an offer wall, right? Instead of calling it an offer wall, you might as well, engage with people whom you're more comfortable promoting for. In terms of IAP, you'll want to initially measure for as a percentage of ad revenue, because initially you're really heavily dependent on that ad revenue chunk. But as you want to engage users and keep growing the engagement matrices, you'll want to see that the IAP numbers increase as a percentage of ad revenue. You don't want that dipping, because then you know that your users are not, or are engaging with your game, but are not really willing to invest their money in your game. You develop multiple flows by cohorting users. Often there are times when you see free users trying to, they have a different way that they play your game versus a paid user who plays your game for different reasons. You need to begin understanding what these reasons are And your game really needs to have 2 or 3 different flows for each of these sorts of users. And eventually, yes, you retarget for max effect, right? Uh, in terms of engagement, initially you optimize for paying users and sessions and free-to-play sessions, excuse me, and then you monitor for drop in organic and inorganic traffic and see how you can begin reviving some of those users. What are the key tenets of growth? You have user acquisition, you have retention, and you have revenue. So where do we begin? For UA, you broadly want to look at your CTR, which is the primary metric. A lot of the times we miss that and say, what is my cost of acquisition or cost of install? If your CTRs double, your cost of acquisition halves, right? And this is a simple science. Not a lot of people pay attention to it. But when you have channels where you're able to target, that is where you're going to be able to want to monitor this and improve the targeting. You're going to want to check your cost per paying user. You're going to want to check your cost per install, of course. You want to do a channel and cohort analysis to try and see what sort of users, high engagement users, are coming from which channel. Are they coming from a Meta? Are they coming from a Google? In Meta and Google, what types of campaigns are they coming from? Try and understand how all of this is happening so that you know where your money is most well being spent, right? You'll also want to try and capture the demographic metrics because you, of course, want to understand which direction your game is taking. Let's say you intended it initially for teens to kind of go and play, but it resonates with office goers. You might want to try and understand how office goers are interacting with the game and why they're interacting with the game. So it's very important to get the demographic metrics straight so that you can then go target more of such users. You'd want to do geo-analysis, of course. A lot of the times, I've had developers who come and build a game and then they don't know where it's running. And when I do an open market test, suddenly it's performing in the Philippines or Brazil. And that kind of speaks to why you should have a geo-analysis done every now and then to understand where your cost of user acquisition is less, also where your engagement is more, right? And LTV by source, virality and social. So you need to understand, where the virality of the game is really coming from, whether it's the user that's promoting the game, whether it's being shared on social, whether it's your ads that's really giving you that virality, or where you think the users are coming from, or where when you go to your dashboard, you see the users are coming from in terms of user activity, right? Below are a whole bunch of good stuff you can do in terms of improving the overall user acquisition approach. I'll let you go through it. The slides will be shared later, so you can go through it. So hows, right? You need to measure. This is something I often see people don't deploy, but you need to measure using an MMP. You need to have an MMP in place to understand all of this cohorting. If you're not able to do that, you're not going to be able to identify your successful strategies where you're going to understand your demographics, your location interests, even if you're targeting an app event, right, in mobile gaming. Let's say you want to target users that have watched at least 10 ads to understand who these users are and how you can probably get more engaged users to your app. This is something you'll probably only be able to do if you use MMP, which is a mobile measurement platform. In another case, for example, you want to attract streamers, right? And you don't want to go to Instagram and find streamers and engage with them. So a simple thing, a hack could be you target people who like PewDiePie, who like apps like Twitch, and then you show your creatives to them. Automatically, you start acquiring streamers without even having the hassle of investing in a marketing team to go after streamers and talk to them directly. And then from that cohort, you measure the time spent on the game. You eventually know that these are people that are probably streaming your game or doing something with your game, which is coming in terms, which is resulting in terms of longer engagement. So this is some of the reasons, some of the ways you can kind of measure how the game progresses and how your UA efforts are progressing. You need to measure the K factor. The formula is given, and a K factor of greater than 1 is desirable. So this is basically one person refers another person. That means it's good, right? Even if they refer 10 people, but if you get 1 user out of that, that's great. You need to be incentivizing users to attract people, for them to attract new users and share their games. This is an age-old strategy, but works nonetheless. And the user who joined through the link also needs to be incentivized to kind of come and play the game, right? And specific user flows and journeys can be created around this so that this is something that will keep them engaged for a longer duration. You also need to know what sort of invites work, which ones don't. Again, this speaks to A/B testing and trying to see how your marketing is working for you. You need to measure the cohort of users which came in from the invites, and also begin measuring their engagements and revenue, right? And then you can really pit them against a user acquisition or paid user acquisition campaign to see whether these users are doing better than your paid users. In a lot of cases, we find users inviting other users just to get those benefits, and then those users who have been invited kind of go dark, right? And then we know there's botting going on in the system. So tracking is everything. Understanding what the engagement matrices are everything, even if you want to understand if there is any botting going on within your game. Retention matrices. You'll want to see the D0 to D7 when you're just getting started. You'll want to see the D0 to D7 matrices and monitor them. This really needs to be your benchmark into further developing the game, because if this is less than 10, 15 or 30%, whatever the benchmark for your genre is, then you got to kind of think of how you want to reboot the game. You'll also want to check the intro funnel and the sign-up funnel to see that there is no friction over there. You'll want to do your level progression analysis. In a lot of cases, we have, after the game comes on board and starts working with us, we have seen that certain levels, they are able to cross, maybe level 8 and 10, they're able to cross much quicker than level 3 and 4. And then we have to do a level rearrangement. So this is very important from a game standpoint. You'll also want to see what sort of users are, or which acquisition strategy is contributing to your DAOs. And that is very important in terms of user engagement and monetization, and earning your money, basically. The player engagement also is linked to your UA strategy, so you need to kind of cohort those users and see which acquisition strategy is giving you a better engagement time. And then the churn. Eventually, you need to understand where your users are going, why they're churning out. And there's a whole bunch of good stuff again down there which you can use to kind of determine all of these matrices. So some of the best practices we see or we talk to game developers are daily sign-on bonuses. This is a great way of having them come back. You personalize experiences to try and have different game flows so that there is better character development and there is more attractive character development for each of those users. You discount some of the IAPs, heavy discount them from time to time to see the people are spending. If they don't spend even now, then there's a problem with your game, or there's a problem with the IAPs and the value they're giving the user, right? And you need to do reminder cohorting, and this is primarily speaking to RMGs, right? There was a case where an RMG in India kind of understood every hour of the week. It understood when the user was coming online, and it segmented all of those users and sent a reminder just before the time they would come online after observing their behavior for 6 months. So this kind of had them almost triple their engagement rate by just doing a little bit of analysis and reminder cohorting. Some of the other stuff, you need to mix up the gameplay in a lot of cases. I think a great place where they have done this is Legends of Zelda, where they have a mix of exploratory, combat, puzzle-solving gameplay. It appeals to a wide variety of audiences. It draws in a wide variety of audiences and chances of higher engagement with the game. The game needs to, of course, have meaningful progression with a sense of accomplishment for the user. A great way to do this would also be to have live events in the game, have challenges. Maybe when you hit the 5 million or 7 million mark, you can have quizzes, concerts, engagement, which kind of talks to users and has them spend more time within the game. And probably there's some buzz also that's created around this, right, by your users. Time challenges are a great way to kind of draw in users and earn even better rewards. And leaderboards, this is the oldest way of doing it. Link it to a GPS, have a leaderboard saying you're the local, somebody goes to Goa and they on the local leaderboard have the highest points, or they're trending the highest in the game in terms of achievements. I think this is a great way of kind of having some bit of engagement going on. In terms of revenue, right, you have what are the matrices you should be looking at? You need to look at your average revenue per user, your average revenue per paying user, and of course, all this ties into your average order value, right? And what you need to optimize for is your initial purchase trigger. Understanding this is key to having any IAP sort of journey kickstart and become more strong. If you don't know what your purchase triggers are within the game, you're kind of then avoiding, addressing the devil in the room, right? You also need to know what your LTVs are and do a channel analysis for paying users, because oftentimes, we talk to developers and they kind of come back and say, hey, we are getting paying users, but we don't know where they're coming from and where we should be spending money. So this is something, again, putting a mobile measurement platform really helps with, and also helps you understand where you need to be spending those marketing dollars. So some insights, for IAP revenue, you have a very low size ticket size purchases, but very high value. Make this limited in nature so that people initially, it's like, taste of that IAP, and then they start spending with the games. You categorize your IAPs into various IAPs. You can break them down so that there's a lot more for the user to purchase from. This also kind of helps you understand what sort of users are engaging with your game, whether these are people who want time saver IAPs, these are people who want lifetime enjoy all IAPs, people who like mystery boxes, etc., etc. I think having that variety kind of talks to different sorts of audiences. You can also club these IAPs if you want to. You should have multiple in-game currencies and allow exchanging these currencies while having some premium currencies which are received by hours of gameplay or can be bought by real money, right? And that kind of helps you kickstart that IAP journey. Also, you should have rewarded videos and snippets. Basically, these are small microtransactions that you can have the user spend money. You can have a pack of 20 or 30 snippets. So let's say the user is probably traveling from point A to point B and wants to quickly level up on the game by playing 2 or 3 levels. Then they kind of use those snippets to get by. In terms of ad revenue, what should you be looking at? You have rewarded ads, of course. Sponsorship opportunities, again, this is something that people don't do often enough, and I keep telling them they should capitalize on the already huge user base that they have. You should be maximizing the number of supply-side partners that you work with. You need to do an ad unit optimization to understand which ad units are working for you, and the ones that are not, try to reduce the frequency of those showing up. You also need to do a UA channel analysis where you're going to see which UA channel or which UA strategy is giving you more of ad free-to-play users versus paid users. And of course, you do a drop-off analysis to see whether there's any friction that's being created by advertising, because of which you need to reduce the number of times a certain type of ad or a certain type of user journey needs to be tweaked with. Yeah, so some of the best practices over here are, you need to watch out every few weeks for the partners that are integrated to see which ones are ranking better in which territories. This is definitely something a marketing team would look at, because you're going to go after them to get you your revenue, right? And this is how you kind of sit and optimize each step of that funnel. Some of the things you really need to watch out for if your game, let's say, is really popular in India, then you need to ensure that festival seasons, local events, end of the year, O&D quarter, which is a big thing. Marketers are spending money just so that they can close their budgets for the year. And summer months, right? People have a lot of remarketing spends during the summer months because there's a lot of shopping sales going on. So these are all places where an ad revenue sort of funnel kind of has higher ECPMs from your marketers. And this is something that you should watch out for, or if the guy, whoever the person is who's in charge of ad revenue, should be watching out for within your organization. A good practice would be to curate the audience demographics and share them with agency trading heads to showcase your game. I know, you'll probably do this 10 times, but the 11th time will bear fruit. It is something that you need to do as practice. Even if it doesn't bear fruit, this is something that needs to get in as an industry practice, because we don't find marketing dollars really shifting into gaming inventory, and that really needs to start changing, right? Why shouldn't a Nike, why shouldn't a Nestle begin investing in gaming inventory, right? You are the consumers of all of these products, but they don't want to show it in the medium you consume it in. So these are really profound questions that you should be asking yourself. A simple exercise now we'll get to where we peel the onion and understand how to kind of work our way backwards, right? There's a sudden increase in a game in ABDA, which is your average revenue per daily active user. So then, as a marketer, what would you do, right? You would go check if any changes have been made to the campaigns in March. If the answer is no, then you see which months users are affecting this change, right? If the revenue is not coming from the March cohort of users, then you go and check from the previous cohort of users where it's coming from, and then I find that it's from Feb, right? And if any month prior was contributing, it's no. And the reason why Feb cohort of users gave me this was because there was a free trial that was introduced, and these users who came into the free trial then started transacting as into micro whatever IAPs and whatever, right? And this is from a real world scenario that we got, because we kind of had a game which came in and suddenly we saw things increasing, and the biggest challenge over here was marketing was not talking to product, right? Product had released this and they just mentioned it as a, by the way, we did this free trial, and that was lost in the MOMs. And later on, when marketing saw that this revenue started increasing, we didn't know where it was coming from and why it was coming, because none of our UA channels kind of showed anything. So we had to go a month back to find out that a free trial was the reason this was happening. So this is something, if you've been paying attention to the market, shouldn't shock you, but it certainly did take me by storm. But yeah, these are your global averages when it comes to retention matrices. These are the good to haves. An ideal D1 retention should be 31%, and D7 should be 12%. But as you go down and break it down by territory, right, at an OS level, you kind of see it change where Oceania and North America are kind of 1 and 2, but the user behavior changes drastically within the other territories. And this is very important to note, because when your game is popular in certain territories, you need to understand how these matrices impact your user acquisition strategy, and also whether you're trending the right way. Some of the user acquisition strategies, some of the games and their genres and their respective benchmarks. If you're looking to build games for retention, you should really look at casino, board, and match games, as they're highly addictive and they tend to hold the user's attention. Not great news for casual simulator and action game developers, because they tend to hold the least amount of attention, at least according to this chart. And this is all from AppsFlyer, right? And a sample size of 30,000 games, at least that's what they called out on the article. Retention can directly impact ad revenue and cost of acquiring users. So you have to ensure that you're at least meeting the certain minimum benchmarks, otherwise the business model itself is going to come into question at some point. So these are some of the engagement matrices that we see. We find that in North America, multiplayer and casino games both have a session length of over 15 minutes for their top 25%. And even the bottom 25% of the above two genres have the longest session durations as compared to other genres. So if you're building, really casino is the way to go, at least by looking at numbers, right? But then who looks at numbers? We look at passion. So in other genres, the majority, the median session length is 4 to 9 minutes. In Europe, it's not casino, but happens to be card games. So that also talks to the kind of audiences that is there in Europe. They are slightly more old. The region is not really reproducing at the rate that it should be. So you have a lot of older users kind of go and play these card games. And the session duration, of course, exceeds 25 minutes, which is great if you're kind of building for this market, right? And if it's a card game. In Asia, it's ripe for innovation and development. Casino games are really doing well. 23 minutes of user attention over here per session, and that's a great place to be for Asia. For other genres, we don't see it peak more than 5 minutes. So if you're building for any of these markets, these are the benchmarks that you should be looking at. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Here, right, as an aspiring new company that I'm going to be registering soon, right? So I just want to ask how precisely, right, we need to target from a regional perspective. Is there some insights? Because we have seen North America and other pieces, but from an India perspective, is there something that we can look at?
See, in terms of India, it's a large population size, right? And often we find that certain states perform better in comparison to other states. And if you're taking case in point RMG, they are banned in certain states and they're not banned in certain states. And some states provide you with a lot more ROI than the others. So yes, talking to your question, region is important when you're developing a game, and understanding where you're getting your ROI from is key to succeeding. Again, if you were to look at a country like maybe a Latvia, that might not be that much of a problem. But if you're looking at a large, well-populated country like India, yes, region-specific would be important.
Right.
One more question, time for one more question.
May I? Thank you so much for that talk. I think the data service is very interesting, but as a developer who's trying to go from 0 to 1, make a new thing, I have a very small team. The question I had is, how do you even collect the data of this form in terms of user acquisition, retention, etc.? A lot of this talk focuses on at least a medium-sized game, if not a large game, that's able to get a lot of this data and then needs to sort of wrangle it and get useful insights from it. But how do you begin understanding things like user acquisition and retention when you're a really small game? Especially even if you get access to things like Twitch streamers to market it for you, you bias that data in terms of they're your friends and family who you accessed and whatnot. So your sample size is small. On top of that, you've got biases. How do you deal with all that?
Sure, great question. I was faced with a similar question when it came to a particular game developer some time back, right? And I then went on to actually do some research and understand how do I do this, especially if they wanted to cohort some of this information. A great tool I found was Appmetrica. It's a Russian tool, so use it with caution. That's all I can say. But nonetheless, it does the job, right? But again, some of the retention information is available from Firebase, from Google Analytics. So that should help you build that intelligence. But as far as specific users coming in, I don't have an answer for that, right? And that's what even I've been banging my head against the wall when we work with different sort of developers at different stages of their life cycle. It is something that puzzles us. But a good thing for you to do would be to go and talk to various publishers to see if their ecosystem is able to bring something to you. Nazara is a great starting point. But yeah, you can talk to different sets of game publishing companies and they can help you address these challenges.